Test. 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 Test, test, test. Hello, hello. Test, 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 test. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Good morning. Thank you. You were my guardian angel. Yeah, she goes, why are people lying about you?
Oh my God. How are you doing?
Good.
What's that? You may not have anything inside of you.
What's up, homie?
What's up?
How you doing, man?
Okay. I'm right here. I'm not going to. Okay.
We have not got mics yet. Yeah, none of them. I know on right now. Nothing's working. And I think their whole board is in the next room.
Oh, really?
So if you want to go over there, tell them we need mics in our room. San Harbor one, yeah. Sandbox, Litterbox one. Shoebox. Freaking Prada had me rolling last night. I couldn't even take a bite of my food because I was
Get
scared.
rid of
I was
that
gonna choke on
guy.
it.
What the heck?
Did you get my update?
It was the same darn file, dude.
You ready? What am I doing?
No.
I don't keep it real basic. I don't want to go into like that much into 106 or anything like that.
Keeping focus on consultation.
Yeah, just communication, talking.
Let's hear about the 105.
Yeah, right. That's why I wanted to throw out all these numbers.
The
and
Sarahhead
everything.
wants to hear.
Because I find it goes over people's heads. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Let me write that down. I would never look at that again. Never see that.
It's like, hey, ITEP, can you turn this into a class? I was telling them, like, when they do their classes, have us mock up something. Like, if it's grant writing, have us mock up a grant, to where we're filling one out.
No,
for reals.
that's a really good idea.
Well, because they go, yeah, you'll do it with this form. It's like, give me the damn form so I can do it within the class.
I work with state agencies, and there's federal laws mandating stuff, but really all the consultation is when you're going to talk, who's talking, where you're going to talk, and what initiates it, kind of thing. It's really basic usually.
Yeah.
But it gets into like the designees, like that person can't make it, so they send a designee, and then the guy goes, Well, I'm gonna send my designate. Well, I'm gonna send my designate's designate. You know,
My backup's back.
yeah.
I was like saw the list of like people in like different what do you call it groups or whatever, and you see all their positions and stuff, and then there's the backups. Like, did these guys get to see anything? Oh, I guess all the time.
Oh.
I'm not going. They don't have a good golf course there. You go.
Morning, Merv.
Spelling out. People that are interested in regulations. It's got to be like it's almost like such a dry topic. You're like, someone pass me some water. The air feels chalky.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello.
You didn't upload I have active links to policy updates and stuff. Am I able to email it to you? And are you able to like put the link or at least the presentation into the chat box?
This can't. Government can't use the USBs.
The what?
Can you use the USB ports on this?
I could, yeah.
We can drive through. I know some of the government laptops that lock up the USB ports.
Yeah, no, it's accessible. It has my PIV card.
Okay.
Morning. Hey, nice to meet you, finally. After all these years, huh? The man, the myth, the myth.
We got 3 mics. We got 4 mics.
Yeah, but none of them working right now.
None of them are working.
I heard something. Not us.
Karaoke drained the batteries last night.
There's no karaoke. Was it karaoke?
You got all worried.
Well, we'll see those karaoke.
I want to see some James Brown. I was looking for karaoke. I couldn't find it. No one wanted it. You talk to my boss. I was all for it.
Okay, it's in. Well, I put the email in there. Save as.
Well, I don't know about that,
It's in there.
You got it in there?
Yeah, but it looked like it saved as like an email. That's it. We open it up. I'm sorry.
Oh, it is an.
Yeah, I don't know why I did it that way.
When you share, you shared You're right. It is more.
There it is right there.
Grab some tech issues, so we'll start.
Bear with me.
Perfect.
I try to be, man.
Congratulations.
Ooh.
No, the mic.
Me? No way. Not me. Don't tell my boss that. She'll never. Yeah, I got the camera set up pointing to these chairs for panel discussion. I'm not sure though. Like, I mean, I've asked Cliff to see what he thinks because I want you guys to be comfortable. No podium. Otherwise, you guys will sit there and go back and forth, tripping over cords and stuff. All right, so none of our mics are working.
Test. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da. Oh, da-da-da. Do.
Is that two? I don't use two in here. I use like one and three.
Ba-ba-ba-ba. Oh, okay.
You got three in here? I'm holding three right now. This is
Any of them. If I can get noise out of any of them. Oh.
There we go.
Hello. Do.
Perfect, man.
Bow.
You guys sit somewhere around here, John.
And love.
We're gonna be sitting up here. Okay.
I'll just keep these two.
Somewhere you can sit up here, but kind of up here in this general area, but not to the left of this. But even right here, but facing people, facing them. Yeah, facing. Yeah, just kind of facing them a little bit, though. At least it's kind of informal. I don't know what Will's doing here.
It lowers my blood pressure.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. Of course, thanks for showing up Thursday morning, 8:30 a.m. I hope everybody enjoyed the dinner. I hope everybody is having a really good time. Shasta and team did a really fantastic job here. So the purpose for this session is to talk about consultation, but I don't want to focus on the law and the language so much. And so my name is Clifford Banuelos. I'm the Tribal State Environmental Liaison for the Intertribal Council of Nevada. And my position was created in 2003 at the urging of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe and the Duck Valley Shopai tribe. Duck Valley had a Superfund issue, and the Pyramid Lake tribe had a munitions issue, and they are running into problems with the state. And they wanted someone to work in between the state and the tribes. And so I worked with the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, which is under the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And they figured out, well, let's get funded through this EPA GAP program. And so I'm funded through that program. And so EPA pays my salary, but I'm employed by the Intertribal Council of Nevada. The state has no purview over me. Through the MOU creating my position, I have an office there, free of charge, yay. And but they do charge me for phone and internet. And it's a unique position I have because I'm one of the few tribal liaisons I know of nationwide that is employed by the tribes and not federal or state agencies or a nonprofit. And the nonprofits can have their own agenda. I I always say I work for the 28 federally recognized tribes in Nevada, but I also work for the urban and rural tribes too, because ITCN services them too. So if you're in Nevada, we service you, and if you're Native American, even by descendancy. And so one thing I'm learning as I done the job now for 5 years, the first liaison was Tansy Smith, and she was there from 2004 to 2011. Then Bill Campbell, who passed away shortly after I got the position in 2017. And so one thing I've learned is don't fall in love with the language, because either side can change it. And I didn't really want to focus on the language so much. And so we're just going to want to talk about what the main federal agencies do, because in Nevada, 86% of the land in Nevada is federal, either owned by BLM owned, well, and then U.S. Forest Service. And then I want to touch upon EPA, because EPA is very relevant, because that's who's here and paying for this party. So I call it Native American Tribes Trust, Respect, and Shared Responsibility. And I mean that with all parties, shared responsibility, because often we talk about the federal agencies, state agencies, and a responsibility, but I always have to remind people in the tribes, you got a responsibility too. And we can't just expect them to come to the table and talk if we're not prepared. And so it's a shared responsibility. And so quickly, I want to introduce everybody. I'm not going to give the phone because the mic to everybody, but we have from U.S. Forest Service, Melissa Navis. She's a tribal relations specialist for Forest Service, Humboldt-Tiabi. Yay. And then we have Wilfred Nabahi from the Bureau of Land Management, Native American Coordinator, Battle Mountain District, BMDO. And then we have from Environmental Protection Agency, John J.R. Herbst. What do you go by? Just go J.R.? J.R., okay. And he's a part of the Tribal Branch, Tribal Intergovernmental and Policy Division, TIP 3. Federal agencies love and state agencies love acronyms. And U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region 9. And so I want to start off with Will. He's going to talk about what BLM does and their tribal consultation policy.
Good morning, everyone. The operative word is Battle Mountain District Office. And just to clarify, so Cliff, thank you, Cliff. This is actually the first time I've met John by voice and email a number of years ago. This is actually the first time we've ever met, and I think it's kind of awesome. And thank you for having a crowded room here this morning. I'm pretty impressed. So you guys are all rock stars for being here at 8:30 on the last morning. I wouldn't have been here, but Cliff invited me. So to allude to what Cliff shared with me earlier, this is an active link. Big D over there is going to put it in the chat box for those that are participating online. So these are accessible. And I just wanted to share that this is the consultation policy. So it's been online since 2015. Next slide. One of the things I also want to share, there's also an active website. We can go in there and look at DOI policy. I think in one of what I've heard over the last couple of years, we're always talking about natural resources, land, air, water, and whatnot. And one of the things I want to share with you is a lot of times the dialogue. So under DOI policy, a lot of those things are essentially, they're defined as Indian trust assets. And by that, so if it's something that you gather, something that you can grow, something that you can pick, something that you can hunt, fish, eat, or whatnot, those things would be defined as Indian trust assets. And one of the big things, if you weren't able to participate in yesterday's Bi-State Tribal Natural Resources Committee, so the tribes actually initiated dialogue. And where I'm going with this is essentially that group fundamentally preceded existing policy. Existing consultation policy has been around for a number of years. But the beauty of that group and what I want to illustrate is you don't have to wait for us to come to you. It's important for you to engage us. And I say that when I say us, I mean for all federal entities
or whatnot. So that's an important construct in our relationship, I believe. And one of those things that came out of it was a dual secretary order, which was signed in November 2021. And that was by both Secretary of USDA and also Secretary of Interior. It basically was a directive to both of those entities, and essentially said, we need to be looking at, I want to emphasize, a better way to manage our lands and to think about how we're going to implement co-management hereafter. And what I want to emphasize in that is lands and waters. Next slide, please. So with this, I just want to do a comparison. So all that funny yellow is Bureau of Land Management lands. And so Clifford stated it was 86% federal lands in Nevada. And so even if you do a comparison from the Battle Mountain District alone, which is approximately 13.2 million acres, California Bureau of Land Management lands is about 15.5 million acres, but it also includes that northwest sector of Nevada. So stepping back in about 2018, DOI, BIA, they started doing outreach and wanted to adopt or a re-boundary, and a lot of that was watershed based. So of course, there's a protective posture that exists in California versus that whole middle Nevada. So the reality is so reflective of our district in comparison to California. We have a tough job because, one, if you went and cracked the books, there's probably actively in process about 111 formal federal actions at the EA/EIS level. And I happen to go to the e-planning website, and to compare that to California, California has about 4 or 5. So when you look at the engagement for tribes and the challenges for tribes to initiate and have dialogue with Bureau of Land Management or Bureau of Land Management with tribes, it's a tough effort to pursue because there's so much activity right now. And if you can imagine it happening on federal lands, that's happening at the Battle Mountain District. So one of the things I wanted to share with this group is, does your tribe have a formal adopted consultation policy? And if so, how has it worked and how can it be improved? And if not, why not? My experience in Indian country, I've worked for a tribe where we have worked and developed a consultation policy, and I can only see one Indian brother from another tribe, they adopted a policy as well, because a part of that engagement is, well, how about we adopt our own formal policy and we're going to outline the steps on how federal governments are going to, or we're going to work with our federal government partners. So those are the things to consider. And then just to throw in a quick pitch, I'm going to go like a more deep presentation on BLM 101 because we make it super confusing state by state, district to district, and then where 98.5% of federal actions happen, which is at the field office level. And that's going to be at 11 o'clock, San Harbor. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Yes. So good morning, everyone. I'm so excited you're here. I absolutely love my job. And so to introduce myself again, my name is Melissa Navis. I'm a tribal relations specialist with the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. I've been with the Forest Service for about 4 years. I was with the Army Corps for 17 years as a biologist in Chicago. So I wanted to share one of the things that I love, words matter, right? And my title, Tribal Relations Specialist, is something that I try to convey to my peers on a regular basis. Relations, right? That's the glue that keeps us together. So I'm really excited that today we're talking about the power of relationships. So just to give a brief overview about the Forest Service, we have the structure of the Forest Service, we have a national office, we have regions, and then we have the national forest level. So the national forest level is boots on the ground. And that's where I spend most of my time. I'm still involved with the regional office, and that actually is 5 states. That includes Nevada, California, Utah, Wyoming, and a piece of Idaho. So because I'm involved at the regional office, if there are concerns that cannot be addressed at the local national forest level, which is all of Nevada and 800,000 acres in California, I can elevate it there. but I'm also involved at the national level. So there is all these opportunities to connect when there's questions. So the U.S. Forest Service definition of tribal consultation. The truth is simple, right? So it's government to government. Consultation is tribal leaders that were designated to speak on behalf, the tribal council, with line officers in the Forest Service. So one of the things that it's like I'm a parrot. I'm constantly repeating to everybody is when I'm involved, I'm just a staff member. I'm information sharing. I'm relationship building. The line officer, that could be the forest supervisor, the district ranger at that local level, they actually have the designated authority to speak on behalf of the Forest Service. So what triggers consultation? One of the things that I regularly emphasize, the federal government's relationship with tribes is not a cultural one in my view. It's a legal one. The federal government is legally bound to work with tribes, and we have those relationships in place so that the federal government can not only honor its treaty obligations, but its fiduciary legal obligations as well. So we have the National Environmental Policy Act, National Historic Preservation Act, NAGPRA regarding reburial sites, Indian sacred sites, Archaeological Resources Protection Act, and federal action affecting, there's a lot of affection regarding tribal treaty rights. So next step. So Forest Service employees, from the top of the chief to the seasonal employee at the bottom, every single Forest Service employee has a federal trust responsibility. Every single employee. The responsibilities, whether you're boots on the ground or you're wearing that white collared shirt at the Washington office, are outlined in the Forest Service Manual and the Forest Service Handbook. The handbook is tailored locally. So it's kind of, whenever I have a question to answer, I go to those two documents. And I think it's really important that everybody understands what the rules, the regulations, and the expectations, obligations are, right? So when you have a concern, you go to that document and find out, what am I supposed to be getting here? What kind of information? What are their obligations, responsibilities? Knowledge is power, right? So when you show up at that meeting, you know exactly what is expected of that individual. And I'm speaking with Forest Service wise. Cultural and Heritage Cooperation Authority. Now, that is a beautiful thing. I'm going to share with you two instances where that authority was able to support tribal interests. So in one case, there's a national forest, and there was an eagle's nest. Not an eagle's nest, it was a raptor nest. My apologies. And a local community member wanted to harvest the eggs. The Forest Service was concerned about sharing that information. They were able to work with the tribe to say, is this a wildlife species of interest that is part of your ceremonies, that is culturally relevant to you? The tribe said yes. Forest Service worked with the tribe and were able to protect the location of that nest. Second situation, example I wanted to share regarding the Cultural and Heritage Cooperation Authority was a tribe requested for a specific ceremony, a part of a forest to be closed off. And they were able to close off that section of the Forest Service for that specific ceremony, utilizing the Cultural and Heritage Cooperation Authority. The heart matters. Our words matters. Relationship matters. But after over 20 years of experience with the federal government, being able to legally cite what your rights are is key. And I really appreciate Cliff sharing this earlier, whatever the rules are, whatever the obligations are, everything is also subject to change, right? And that's the power of now with all of us together. If there's something that needs to be updated, we can work on that collectively to improve it. And lastly, I just want to share a tribal relations action plan. So in November, we are going to have a strategic action plan. So when I say we, the Forest Service, it's going to be shared at the Tribal Nations Summit in DC. And that involves the entire continental United States from coast to coast. Why is that relevant? It's approximately 13 pages, but it's your cliff notes. It's your cliff notes. So if there's It's your cliff notes. It's so if there's something specific you're interested in, you can point to this and it'll give you the citation of where to look to elaborate on that topic. So the action plan is a plan for the Forest Service and how we're going to work with tribes going forward. Next slide. I think this might be the last one. So for the action plan, the focus areas is advancing the tribal relations program, administration's direction, develop capacity within the USDA, Forest Service, and tribes, legislative monitoring. I mean, it's amazing the power of just a few words being removed or added to legislation, right? Create reporting, accountability, and performance measurements. Enhance stewardship of the nation's forest. So under that category, co-stewardship, shared stewardship, tribal stewardship, protecting tribal treaty, religious subsistence, and strengthening relationship between Indian tribes and the U.S. Forest Service. If there's one thing, I think that's the last slide, right? Yes. So if there's one thing that I want to drive home for everyone here, relationships. Anything is possible. If we could have a cup of coffee, we could break bread together, and let's just imagine how can we do this better. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I know that Melissa touched on relationships because I'm going to delve into that a little bit.
I love the Cliff Notes reference. That was great. All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to just start by acknowledging that we could have an entire conference on consultation. That's how important this work is. And, thank you, Cliff, for bringing us all together. I think it's really important that we're here, we're talking, and we're having this dialogue. What I want to do, I have a few slides here. I really want to kind of frame up how EPA approaches consultation. I think most of you who work with EPA are probably familiar with some of these documents, but I really, what I really wanted to show during this presentation is to show how we're learning, so I tried to put the dates behind all these documents to show that we're progressing, we're learning, and that's not stopping right now. So we're continuing our work on that. To begin with, we have the consultation policy, which was done back in 2011. That's our national agency-wide consultation policy. So that's for headquarters, for regional offices. That's the national approach, answers all the big questions about where, when, how, and how we conduct consultations. That sets the standard for agency-wide consultation. Back in 2016, there's a tribal treaty rights guidance, and that document was developed to specifically develop 3 questions that should be asked during consultation regarding treaty rights. Again, important work. Treaty rights continue to be very important work with consultation, and there's ongoing higher level discussion about how to make sure that that treaty rights discussion continues at that high level within the consultation policy. Also, we have the guiding principles for Alaska Native corporations. This is something that's up in Alaska, something that was developed fairly recent and is available online. And then, importantly, here in Region 9, how do we implement EPA's consultation policy? We have multiple implementation procedures and guidances that we've developed within Region 9. And hopefully this link, it should work, I hope. I tested it before I was here, so I hope it works. But we also have, best practice guides for water division. We have air radiation division. We have all these implementation procedures that implement EPA's consultation policy. Because again, the consultation policy is very broad, agency-wide, but in Region 9, we're unique. We need to have specific implementation procedures focused for the work that we do here in Region 9. I'd also like to note, we do have an RTOC consultation work group. Kelsey Stryker and Ruben Mojica Hernandez, they're leading the RTOC consultation work group. Cliff's an active member on that, and really appreciate, if anyone's interested in learning more on that coordination piece in terms of how we can improve consultation at EPA. That's been an amazing opportunity to help us, really work on this work. Next slide, Cliff. All right, so for the consultation policy, I think it's really important that the EPA's consultation policy implements both Executive Order 13175 and EPA's 1984 Indian policy. And so it's, my mic's going a little weird, but okay. But I think that's really important, and that's stated directly in the policy, implements both those important documents. Based on EPA's 1984 Indian policy, may affect tribal interest is how EPA approaches consultation. So if you could look on the graphic to the right, we have EPA's consultation policy for may affect tribal interest. And then we have the language that comes directly from the Executive Order 13175, which is direct and substantial effects. So again, in EPA, we are very, very open. The door is always open for consultation, may affect tribal interest. That's on reservation, off reservation. There's all kinds of coordination that happens to make that determination. And it's a really important discussion that we have. And we really try to do early engagement to make those determinations so we get that right. I think, let's see, also I can go through that. We can go next slide here. Really what I want to touch on during my short time here is some of the recent work that's been going on. Back in January 2021, President Biden released a memo early on his administration. I think within 2 weeks is what I've heard. In January 2021, a memo on consultation and strengthening nation-to-nation relationships. EPA was very responsive to that memo right away and developed a plan for responding to that memo. And I think that was done fairly quick, if I remember right, back when that was done. And what happened is EPA developed a plan in terms of how we're going to respond to the memo, which included setting up a work group that included folks from headquarters and regional offices to identify ways to improve how EPA conducts consultation, not only in Region 9, but across the agency. A link to the plans available here, this hyperlink works, and then also I put a link to the memo specifically. Where we are now is there's been high-level, agency-level senior leadership discussion in terms of how EPA is going to potentially make improvements to the consultation policy. So within the next couple months, we should see an opportunity to consult on some of these proposed changes. These levels are high level. They're having these discussions in terms of all these proposed changes. But I think by the beginning of 2023, we should see some work on that in terms of what EPA is proposing, and there'll be a consultation opportunity to incorporate some of those things. But again, I just really wanted to stress during this time to show that all the way from 1984 to where we are in 2022, coming up on 2023, we're learning at EPA. And I think this coordination, the partnership that we have, we need to do this more. And Cliff, I really appreciate you bringing us together, especially federal agencies and departments, because we can all learn from each other. So, all right. But I appreciate this time, and thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And I want to touch upon something. I don't really have a slide for it, but yesterday, Big Pine and Owens Valley did a great presentation where they went over some consultation stuff. And like Melissa said, it's really a legal reason why the consultation is initiated. And so NEPA 1501.2, applying NEPA early in the process is something that we all deal with. Often when consultation is initiated, it's NEPA related or National Historic Preservation Act related. And they had a nice little thing that says consultation is used several times in the regulation, but it calls for consultation with other agencies, mostly for permitting. And in my job, working for a state, not working for ITCN, but working with the state, permitting is often what comes up regarding a consultation or, Cliff, should we consult with this tribe? The question I get, and usually it's permitting related. But it's the agencies really talking between themselves often in NEPA language. But in the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106, it calls for government-to-government consultation with Native American tribes. The law triggers tribal consultation in the NEPA process, and it may cause anything that causes significant impact. And violation of NHPA is on antiquities and historical things. And again, for the legal reasons, it's very important to keep that in mind. And often I'm trying to do this from a tribal perspective when we're in this session, and often tribes don't really fully understand that, and we need to. And the staff here, you guys are the technical experts along with your tribal historic preservation offices and other people. We need to make sure that our leaders understand that. And so one thing I want to talk about is Nevada a little bit, Myro. And I know California has 2 consultation laws they passed recently. I won't get into that because that's not what I do. But AB 264 was passed in 2000 and I'm losing track, 19, I believe. And then COVID happened. But they were in AB 264, the bill for Nevada, it mandates that the state, every department for the state has a tribal liaison. And then that the Nevada Indian Commission, which is under the governor's office, Department of Tourism, writes a consultation policy, a tribal consultation policy. They have yet to finish that policy, though. It also mandates that the Department of Administration writes a training plan for the state personnel. But without that consultation policy, they're unsure what they're going to do, what the role is. Kind of what Melissa talked about with that little handbook. Okay, we need language. What do you want out of this? And that's what AB 264, the consultation policy, does. Because the question I get often from the state reps is, well, basically, how do I quantify that I'm doing successfully or unsuccessfully this consultation? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. And I really get those questions from them. I don't know what I'm doing here, Cliff. Communication protocols. So a lot of tribes in Nevada, when Tansy Smith first came into position, she went to the tribes and said, we need some kind of protocol in place. The state doesn't have a federal trust responsibility, but we can have some kind of protocols in place. And basically the protocols say when communication with the state will be initiated, for what reasons, who's going to meet, and usually there's designees when they do that, and how often they're going to meet, and what they kind of want out of each of the meetings, or out of this communication. And then some of them is differentiated, but that's pretty much what it says. One of the issues I'm running into is that a council has a protocol in place, and the state recognizes that protocol because both the tribe and the state sign off on it. However, tribes are saying the previous council did that. We don't recognize that protocol. And it's creating frustration at the state level. Individual tribal consultation policies, Will talked about that briefly. So in Nevada, we have one tribe, the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe, that does have a tribal consultation policy now. And the Fort McDermott Paiute Shoshone tribe and the Summit Lake tribe, I believe, are also working on their own consultation policies. But it's something that we really need to push because, I mean, we're here environmental-wise, but we have health and human services, childcare. We have other services that are impacted by consultation. It's very important that we do have the tribes have their own consultation policy because now they're dictating the terms of what they expect out of the consultation. And one thing also, I wanted, we did a presentation in Elko not too long ago, and similar presentations with Will and Melissa. And one thing I wanted to convey on the attendees was the federal government has a lot of resources. They have a lot of personnel devoted to consultation. The state has maybe one person in one of their branches. A person, most of them are technical experts. They're permitters, they're scientists, they're water quality experts, they're scientists. Well, they don't know anything about this stuff. They're like, I didn't sign up for this. Why am I consulting? I don't know what I'm doing here. And it's kind of unfair to them. I agree with that. They need more personnel. And one of the issues with AB 264 was the department heads are like, we don't have a fiscal note attached to these things. We don't know how much personnel we have to hire. We don't know what resources we need, training. The bill was passed, but there was no fiscal note to it. And so that's still an issue. So what they're doing is they're giving the responsibility to someone who already has existing job duties. And FTE was talked about a little bit yesterday. Maybe 20% of their work, full-time equivalent hours, is devoted to consultation because they don't have a fiscal note. They don't have a budget to pay for these people to do the job statewide. And it's a problem. And so I want to touch upon that a little briefly with the state level, what they're going through. And so there have been some changes in the Biden administration, and JR talked briefly about it. And it doesn't directly apply to consultation, but these things are relevant. And the Biden memos, EO 13985, affirmatively advancing equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunities and responsibility of the whole of our government. And that really implies what we kind of want out of that consultation, what we, from a tribal perspective, want out of it. Equity. Other executive orders, I didn't want to get into that. But Justice 40 really is something that's talked about a lot recently. 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by pollution. And I like that because it's a tribal perspective, and most of us that live on executive order land or treaty land are pushed in areas where the land agencies want to mine or they want to do large projects on or directly adjacent to the lands. They're not going to do it in big urban areas, big cities where all the rich people are. They're going to put it where the poor people are. Environmental justice. We put environmental justice at the center of what we do, addressing the disproportionate health, environmental, and economic impacts that have been borne primarily by communities of color, places too often left behind. And that's President Biden. And so it's all good and everything. And anybody knows me, I'm just going to speak plainly. It's nice that the Biden administration is talking about these things and enhancing the language, but elections happen in 2 years, and the election is going to happen where a lot of congressional seats where the Senate may be lost in just a few days, and maybe even the House, and that's going to change possibly some of this stuff. And we always want to have, even though Mervyn did point out, because it's black to white, it doesn't mean it's right. Is that what you say? What do you say, Mervyn? But that's what I touched upon earlier. I just see so much of these languages. Everybody's like focused on we needed the language in these agreements and everything. I'm like, well, it's subject to change or interpretation. So really, when it gets down to it, the core of, in my experience, is the core of tribal consultations relationships. I'm amazed when I go to tribes and they don't know their land agency representatives. They don't know USDA liaison. They don't, or the people they have to work with. They don't know their EPA POs. They haven't developed a relationship with them. They don't know whether they have 2 kids or any kids. They don't know anything about them. And really, it's relationship building. You need to know those people. And if you don't like them, or you feel like they're just kind of dialing in the job, contact someone higher up and go, I'm not happy with this service. Melissa talked about Forest Service. I've been playing with her. Some of the area offices I deal with, they're just not there, and there's no way I can say to Forest Service, that guy is not doing a good job. It's frustrating because they give so much authority to their area offices, yet there doesn't seem to be any consequence for if they don't do their job, because it's so muddled. It is a mess. Anybody that's worked with a land agency, BLM, and Forest Service, it's a muddled mess. It's like they give them the authority, but then they say, no, there's some guy higher up that has the authority to do that, but we are implementing it. And then you talk to the higher ups, they're like, oh, that's the area office that made a decision. And it's like, what? Who's responsible here? And so it's hard to develop relationships that way. But I think the key way is, again, knowing your people that in your office from whatever agency it is, federal or state, and developing that relationship, developing trust. In my role, and I share it with my boss, Ms. Quintana here from ITCN, I frankly get lied to a lot by state and federal agencies. And when someone's lied in a relationship, when they lie, they're kind of covering up something they're kind of ashamed of, or they omit information. But to me, that's a lie. It's a lie by omission. And or they're like, well, someone else, they changed it around. In fact, I had something came up recently regarding commercial pine nut picking, and the authority. We talked with an area office about who was the authorizing what's the right word for that, office to communicate with the tribes for commercial pine nut picking, but then the authority got transferred to another office. So we just wasted all of our time talking with that area office, and then another office took over. And they didn't communicate that to us. So thank you for wasting our time. What I want to do is kind of open it up to everyone. Does everyone have any things they want to talk about, the frustrations they've had with consultation? And we have some experts here. Maybe they can give you some advice. Okay, Mayo after John. He's an award winner, so he goes first.
Oh, thank you. Consultation, our experience at San Pasqual has been difficult just because of the amount of consultation we get, right? It's almost like we are overwhelmed with consultation. because we get it from the federal level, the state level. In California, it's AB 52. And then we get it on the local, county, city level of projects coming on. So when you talk about, the state agency having consultation and not having the funding to go with it, well, when you get to the tribal level, it's even less funding, if any at all. So really, how do we build those relationships is hard and maintain them, because we have staff turnover, they have staff turnovers. Relationships take work and time to build. So, our experience is we do it as best we can. We're not perfect by any means. We miss things from time to time and we make mistakes, but we try to rectify them as quickly as possible. And it's just overwhelming, to be honest with you. And I wish that there was funding available to tribes to help pay for a person at the tribal government level that just does consultation. We're fortunate enough that we have a pretty strong environmental department. We have a TIPO, and the TIPO works under the environmental department right now, but they're going to spin off into their own thing. And so our TIPO does a lot of consultation with the environmental department. We do it together. But if we didn't have the TIPO with us, it just wouldn't be done, because just on the environmental department alone, we have so many projects and stuff going on. And then, not every consultation is, environmentally focused, right? Because we get consultation on, a new hotel going up in downtown San Diego. And so it's really, it's something that's necessary. It's important, but also there's really no funding to help tribes achieve that. And I don't know what we can do to rectify that.
You know what I heard, John? EJ has $18 billion.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I know maybe you have a question, but I did want to touch upon, I didn't talk too much on the tribal side, and it's a frustration. And the other thing is capacity building. I'm looking at each tribe in Nevada and the ones I know around in this region, they're so reliant on one or two employees. And when those employees move on, it's like the balloon pops and it's gone. And even if you have something written down, I've been called by directors after someone leaves. I don't know what to do here. And I'm like, I've been at your office. You got the ETEP right on your thing there. Don't you know what that is? Or I don't know what that is. And they have to really build from the beginning up again. And they have to get trained. And it's a frustration. So if the TIPO and John leaves, I can't imagine. If John leaves, the place is falling apart. But no. And we have to think about that. On the tribal side, we do want to leave it so the baton can be carried by someone else. And we need a mentor and make sure the personnel's trained. But on the tribal side, and it's a frustration for state and federal agencies. They don't understand that. They really don't understand. Sometimes I go to consultations and a lawyer's there. I don't have a tribal lawyer with me. It's really frustrating, and I'm overwhelmed. But I've been asked by my tribe to be there, and so I take it very seriously. But I know when I'm, it's like I'm playing Pop Warner football, and there's an NFL player over here, and although I want to do the best, I'm overwhelmed. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that way too. Mio, John wants to answer.
John, it's great to meet you in person finally. Kind of same with Wilfred. First time I see you on Teams all the time. One thing, I mentioned our RTOC consultation work group. We have a water division calendar that we do for coordination. And so it is something that we've heard from EPA's perspective that it is overwhelming. And so if there's ways, this water division calendar, we have 3 months worth of upcoming coordination consultation opportunities. We try to make that concise information so you can just look at the calendar to see what's coming up. So you don't have to go through all the letters and go through all the emails and all that. But we're looking at ways to really try to improve that, streamline. So that's just one example. TCOTS is another. We have our tribal consultation opportunities tracking system. I just read in a report this morning, I think we had 145 consultations go through TCOTS this year in fiscal year 22. So, TCOTS is a really great resource to really see what's going on with EPA. But we've heard that, and we're really trying to identify ways to help, just from the EPA side, because I understand state, local, federal. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. But anyway, I just want to bring that up. Thank you.
And Mio, I know you want to talk about it. I got to answer that real quick. And my boss is here. So we're applying for a big broadband grant. We got like $18 million for a broadband grant. We have tribes in Nevada that barely have internet. And so when they go to DC, when I was on the NTALK, they would have all these ideas using technology. And I'm like, you guys been out to rural areas? They don't have, there's like the Fort McDermott tribe, they, within about a radius of their tower, they have internet, but if you go over here, it doesn't work. But over here, it works. You know, I mean, that's the world we live in a lot of rural areas. And so we're working on, you know, solving that issue. But just want to touch upon that. Emil, you have a?
So I had two comments. The first one was for Melissa. On your slide, it says that you're having a tribal relations program office that you guys will be starting. And I'm wondering if that will help with the problems that some of the California tribes are having with your area offices. And like Cliff said, with the area offices having so much control that they forget their federal responsibility. I know in your presentation, you talked about everybody knowing their federal responsibility, but once they get into those area offices, it becomes their little mini council. And I'm wondering if your new tribal relations program configuration and staffing will help with that. The second part of that question to you, and then I have a thing to John or JR, is that with the tech and federal policy decision-making that's coming through, are you adding that into your tribal relations action plan, or rather, has it been added to your tribal relations action plan because that's being released next month?
I just wrote down a couple of words. I want to make sure I touch on all of that. Thank you so much for that question. So the Tribal Relations Program, I was referring to the national level. However, in Region 5, I'm not sure if you've ever met Rowena Yago. She's the primary point of contact. She's the Region 5, which is California, Tribal Relations Program Manager. And she's worked with the forests in California for a strategic plan specifically for California. So I can loop you in with her. The Tribal Relations Program on the national level, it's being worked on inside out and upside down and every which way as a result of the deluge of changes regarding Indian country. As of the new administration, the strategic plan, the tribal relations strategic plan at the national level, every facet of its being is changing. And for me, that's really exciting because there is so much good stuff to add in there. So tech, the implementation of tech, there is an overhaul that is going on within the Forest Service regarding tribal relations in every single deputy area, from state and private forestry, research and development. There has been an explosion of job opportunities because we want to institutionalize efforts like yesterday. So that plan is going to talk on, we have an entire research and development exponential increase in staff members targeting tribal members to serve in those positions. So it's kind of like prairie roots. They're growing really super deep right now. And I can email you a copy of that plan when it comes out, or email anybody that's interested. I really love the plan because it's national direction. And so when I go to an area office and I'm meeting with staff members and I propose an idea, like, it's just a thought. How about we consider X, Y, and Z? And then if somebody asks me, well, where did you get that thought? I was like, well, it's not original. It's in the plan. So let's take a look here and let's have all of us that are around the table look at the plan and how do we make this happen? I think so many of the good ideas, intentions, amazing cutting edge work that we should be doing, a lot of it is not original thought. It's actually out there. So now that it's in print, let's take that and run with it. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm available after too. I'm trying not to talk too much because I get so excited about this.
So the other,
Melissa, or if I can answer your question real quick, and the struggle that we're having, this is for land management agencies, so this would be collectively, what she was asserting earlier, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit. So at the field office level, respectively, for Bureau of Land Management, or the district level, That's where on our side, BLM, probably about 99.5% of the federal action decision happens. And so the struggle that we're having, and we're trying to catch up to the Forest Service. The thing that needs to be vocalized from my perspective, from tribes to land management agencies, so within their system, those decision makers should have a fully integrated evaluation sector in their personnel evaluation. And that, from my perspective, that's the key. So the decision makers don't always have a robust section in their personal evaluation. And so the success or failure for what they're trying to impart for land management should be integrated with tribal relations. And that just isn't happening. And so I think that's an important mechanism that needs to go in. So a lot of people don't necessarily know that, but that's what we're trying to do right now, sadly, but we're doing it.
Oh, dear.
You know, for the second part of that question, I don't know specifically within those proposed revisions, the consultation policy, how that's all going to fit together. But I know at those high level conversations, that's a topic for sure in terms of how that's going to fit. I think something we'll see here, you know, specifically in Region 9, which is fairly recent. The Region 9 climate adaptation implementation plan that went out, we purposely included 3 questions within that consultation coordination plan. One was regarding tribal treaty rights and one was regarding TEK. So I think as moving forward, I think you're going to see EPA asking if TEK could be considered with, you know, this potential action, which I think is important. I think it's not so much like, hey, we're just checking to see, you know, make sure that there's an acknowledgement that, hey, we're aware that TEK could be part of this decision making, right? And so I think that's a really neat part of moving forward with the consultation coordination plans. It makes it a little bit, I don't know, it's a better approach, I think.
But at the same time, by the way, it's nice to see you in person. I've been seeing you for 2 years on Zoom.
I feel like I know you.
Yeah. Well, you might not like me now, but you know, at the same time, we're acknowledging that in the strategic plan that there's going to be tech put into it. 4 major policies for EPA have come through and have been commented on or within the comment period before the tech policy. And my gripe on the national level is always, well, how are you going to implement or how are you going to add tech into these policies when you're just now in the comment period or finalizing the comment period before it's even done? I mean, when the 106 started out, when different water consultations, when the gap guidance, when the gap allocation, you know, it was on the national level, we were like, but, you know, you're supposed to be adding the tribes into, and tech is more than just adding the traditional ecological knowledge. Tech is about adding our cultural landscape into these. And it just seems to me that every federal agency rushed to consultation because this year and last year, we've been absolutely bombarded, you know, with different consultations. And I agree with you, John. We need to have just one, John Flores. Flores. No. We need to have a consultation person in our staffing. And, you know, that EJ money, yes, we can absolutely use it for that. But that's only 2 years of funding. How do we continue to sustain that? I have a problem with all of the agencies having all these major consultations. I know we are coming up to election years and that the current administration, good, bad, or indifferent, I'm not trying to be political here, you know, ran on the idea of serving brown people, you know, and there's just this huge rush. And I'm wondering, as we rush into all these consultations, as we rush to do all these things, are we missing this important aspect of putting the tribes into these consultations? Thank you.
Get another question or? Yeah.
Yeah, Zach Erickson from the Wiyot Tribe Natural Resources Department. I really I've heard this a few times throughout this conference about tribes developing their own consultation protocol. Come to them, they have it laid out. And I know in California, there's been a few memorandums of understanding that have kind of outlined the tribes how they would like consultation to occur. But I'm interested in what happens if their preferred consultation procedures conflict with those that are put out by the agency in the handbooks and law, such as just one example of timeframes. Like maybe they want more than 30 days. And I'm interested, what's the point of developing a protocol or would there have to be language changed on the agency side to say you have to follow each tribe's protocol rather than working within the agency's protocol? And what happens if that is conflicting?
That's kind of the question. Do you guys have a response?
To be direct, there's nothing that could be done. That's why the importance of why we're having these discussions. That's why it's important. So I would ask, who's your district ranger? Do you know that district ranger in person? Do you have first name? Are you on a first name basis with their tribal liaison? Are you on a first name basis with the Region 5 Pacific Region tribal liaison? Do you know who your tribal liaison is? So I can go on and on and on. And in reverse, do they know you by the first name basis? I think at the end of the day, if you meet on a mutual government to government basis, the important thing is, even with turnovers at tribes, turnovers at agencies, and it's a real challenge in rural agency country, because a lot of people just don't want to live in Jerkwater or nowhere, Nevada, because they all want to live in Carson City or Reno or Las Vegas. And so it's important to develop that relationship and have rapport and to leave those contact information. And it's also important when tribes have turnovers that they're communicating directly with the agencies. And it's important for agencies to communicate with the tribes. So that fundamentally, that's the only way it's going to happen.
So from the Forest Service side of the house, I wanted to elaborate on that. So we have guidance with 30 days, 60 days, 120 days for national. However, tribal consultation never ends. From cradle to grave of a project, it's just an ongoing. What I tell my peers professionally within the agency is, are you doing everything possible? Have you contacted, have you emailed? Do you have an ongoing conversation? Is there any way that we could work in the project for slowing down the process, so that we show that we have an active conversation that's going on? There's something going on, doing everything that is feasible. And then I always encourage, you have the local level, and then you also have the forest supervisor level. At the end of the day, it's that person is the line officer that has the sole authority over the entire forest. So relationships with all of the people that Will mentioned makes a huge difference. In our letters, a lot of times it'll say, it would make the best, the highest chance of making a difference for a project would be, if you could respond within 60 days. And it might be, hold on, we have something to say regarding that project. So like I said, an email, a phone call, document all of your efforts, and wherever it is feasible that a project can take longer. So what I really like to promote is the staff to staff relationship as much as possible. So that's what I encourage all of my coworkers to do. But yeah, there are time frames that we are bound by. So inevitably a decision at some point is going to be made, unless for a legal reason it's halting the entire process. So.
Well, actually, I wanted on my end kind of give my answer to a little different part of that. The reason why to have your own consultation policy, and one thing I heard yesterday, was the day before yesterday, from ORD, was their systemic approach you're going to take towards TAK. And maybe I don't agree with that. Maybe I don't agree with what they're going to define for me. One of the first things I noticed in my role was all the agendas were being developed by the agency initiating the consultation. They didn't develop the agendas with the tribe or tribes. And there was really no one there on the tribal side to develop the agenda. So they were dictating where the conversation was going and the rules of the conversation. And that is not right. And having a consultation policy can help with that, and also can help with what we're going to talk about. Not that NHPA says we're going to talk about this. The tribe goes, no, we're going to talk about this. But the 30-day, 80-day, that stuff and other things, that's definitely something I'm observing and how that's going to be impacted. But Mervin?
Just got 1 minute left.
And you're going?
I just want to say thank you, Cliff, for organizing this session. Thank you, Wilfred, Melissa, and JR over here for, your candor. And I just want to just say something to John's, comment, with regard to funding, funding consultation. We have to be careful because there's always going to be disclaimer language, associated with the agreement to get funding to engage in consultation. And normally it's going to come down to, you can't use this to litigate. And all the times when violations occur on behalf of the federal government, litigation is always an option, but it's not always the best option. I also want to acknowledge Kelsey Strick, and thank you for being our work group lead in this. And I just want to say that the work we're doing here at Region 9 EPA has been good. My position is to have authority at the regional level, that when each of you have an issue that have to, and when you need to engage with the Region 9, that they have the authority to make a decision. I've been involved with national level consultations, and in many instances, these tribal leaders will not want to consult with the Secretary of Interior, not want to consult with secretaries of HUD or DHHS. They want to consult with the president. Nation to nation is what they say. And so with that, and listening to Melissa and Wilfred, and looking at the language in the slide, there has to be delegated authority. There has to be relegated authority down to the regional levels. And because when it comes to decision making, our tribal councils, our tribal chairmen, they can have the authority to make decisions, but when we have to meet with regional level officials, they do not have the authority to make decisions. And so we need to start working on how can we get to that point when we read these executive orders and executive memorandums. That's where it usually ends. They will not delegate authority. And so I will continue to do my best to work with Marta Guzman at Region 9. We have been making some headway on, with some of the divisions, and when tribes bring those issues to Region 9, that in many instances we're starting to experience more and more decision-making authority at the regional level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mervin. And thank you, everyone. And the information here, maybe take a picture of that. If you have any questions, please contact me. I always try to help as much as I can. I try to take pride in returning emails or calls as fast as possible. I know we're all overworked, but thank you.
Sure.
And then I'm going to take a
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
How are we doing?
Huh?
How many people online?
Just a couple.
Not too many?
No, not really.
Really? I'm surprised. I see my boss is on there.
These are tricky things. All right. Thank you.